In this video, Ginger discovers hedgehogs are prickly, a storm passes through the wood, a pigeon almost gets blown into the pond, Ginger goes excavating, and Jellybean has a friend. Hello everybody, welcome back. This is week 2 of What's in the Wood in December, and it's a rather cold day, and I think food's been a bit scarce recently because there's been quite a lot of animals and birds visiting the wood looking for things to eat. So we'll go straight onto the video. The week started 20 minutes after midnight, with Ginger and Cherry in the wood at the same time. It doesn't happen that often, and Cherry quickly curled into a ball. Ginger seemed completely unaware of his prickly friend nearby. After getting over the initial shock, both Ginger and Cherry got back to the business of finding food. I was still really surprised to see Cherry out and about and not already hibernating. Since Cherry has been in the wood virtually every night for some time, the time for hibernation can't be far away now. By 4:25 that morning, Speedy the mouse made an appearance. Speedy's eyes show up really well on the infrared camera. Oh look, another one. I've named Speedy's friend Danger after the cartoon character Danger Mouse, voiced by David Jason. Obviously there's no way to tell them apart from a grainy infrared image, so when seen on their own, it could be either one. By 7:47, the blackbird was at the pond, joined soon after by a robin. That morning, I set up the other camera watching over the pond, and also did some phone photography. It was mostly small garden birds that came for the seed I'd scattered around, but the pigeon and dove didn't want to miss out. The area went quiet after 1:30 that afternoon, and there were no more daytime captures. Tips the cat passed through at 8:25 that evening. Everything was quiet again until just before 10. That's when the camera caught Cherry and Ginger together again. Ginger was after the apples and peanuts I'd left out. There were a number of captures searching for peanuts before retiring to the back of the wood to eat them. It was on one of these trips when Ginger got a little too close to Cherry, and I think must have spiked his nose, giving him a shock. Cherry didn't move much during all of this, although was still eating. It wasn't until left alone that Cherry explored a little. Ginger was back again at 10:25 and immediately had what appeared to be a sneezing fit. If it wasn't that, he had something stuck in his throat and was trying to cough it up. "10 minutes later, Smudge turned up looking for food. It was quite windy, and I think that had her a bit on edge. 'She marked a scent on one of the cyclamens before moving off, ending the captures for the 8th. The first visitor of the 9th was Socks the cat, around 12:30 a.m. Socks appeared to be stalking something unseen by the camera. A few minutes later, Socks made the return trip. 50 minutes later, Cherry was back for food again. Food must have been getting more scarce elsewhere, and Cherry must have been in full preparation for hibernation. From the first capture at 1:19, Cherry was caught multiple times on the camera, wandering up and down the wood looking for seed and insects. The last capture of this session 40 minutes later at 2 a.m. Smudge was the next visitor at 3:36, eating the seed and checking out an apple, before wandering off. Smudge was the last capture of the night. The ring-necked dove was the first capture at 12:30, and that was followed shortly after by a robin. They were the only lunchtime captures, and the wind was picking up. Just before 7 p.m, there were storm-force winds battering the wood, with the motion of the tree and passing leaves triggering the camera. At 8:37, despite the gale, Cherry the hedgehog was back in the wood searching for food. Cherry was the only overnight visitor. After filling the bird feeder, I set up the second camera again by the pond and stayed out for a while with my phone, catching a dunnock in the buddleia. It wasn't long before it flew down to the seed scattered by the pond. As the sun began to come out, I moved the camera so it wasn't looking directly into the glare and got a robin. The Trailcam turned on over lunch, seeing the pigeon fighting the wind, trying not to fall into the pond while having a drink. Dunnocks were the only other daytime captures, with one skimming the camera as it flew off. At 9:32 that evening, Cherry was back once more. While the wind speed had dropped, there were still some strong gusts passing through. "8 minutes later, Tips, the black and white cat, headed up the wood, and a few seconds later, Cherry was spotted at the back of the wood again, heading out through the hedge. That was the end of the 10th. It was still windy just after midnight on the 11th when Ginger came to feed. The wind gusts had him on edge, constantly looking around and being a bit jumpy. A few minutes later, his nose was guiding him to something worth eating under the pond edging stones. After that, he headed further up the wood for a while before returning to the pond area at 24 minutes past midnight. An hour later, he was back at the pond edging stones, determined to get at whatever was under them. During the search, he ended up digging 2 stones out, one of which hit him in the nose. He finally got whatever it was that he was after and moved back to the birdseed pile. He spent several more minutes eating the seed from both piles, with the camera cutting off at 1:27. Two hours later at 3:30, a fox triggered the camera again, but this time it was Smudge. After a minute eating seed, she stopped for a drink at the pond and then moved on down the wood and out of camera view. An hour and a half later at 5:12, Ginger was back, stopping briefly for some more seed before heading out at the top of the wood. That morning, I set the other camera up again at the top end of the wood, in the open area by the pine tree. All I caught was the 2 pigeons vacuuming up the seed I put out. The Trailcam captured a blackbird having a bath just after 1 p.m. And 50 minutes later, one of the ring-necked doves was seen eating the seed the foxes left behind. I went out mid-afternoon with my DSLR camera, but only saw a couple of dunnocks. Tips was the first and only evening capture. Then 7 hours later, the Trailcam captured both Smudge and Ginger out together by the pond. The gusty wind still had Smudge on edge, though Ginger seemed more calm. Ginger wandered off about 3 minutes past 2, leaving Smudge alone by the pond. Smudge wandered off a little while later. Just after 1 p.m, the ring-necked dove and a dunnock were seen around the base of the thorny olive tree. There were a number of small birds flying around the wood, one of which was a great tit. which landed by the pond for a drink. He was chased off by an approaching blackbird and landed again by the cherry plum tree at the back left of the image. Straight after, the robin chased a dunnock away from the thorny olive tree. I don't know if there are a lot of insects on the ground, but 2 doves, the pigeon and a dunnock were all searching the woodland floor. Half an hour later, the robin was at the pond for a drink and some seed. It wasn't until late afternoon, when the light was fading, that the blackbird was seen by the pond again. The next clip, at half speed, shows small birds darting around the trees. The reaction times and direction changes are amazing. Tips came by at 6:52 and headed out through the laurel hedge. It wasn't until just before dawn on the 13th that Jellybean the rabbit set off the camera. I hadn't seen him in a while. Jellybean has a mark on his nose. It wasn't until he came back to the camera that I realised he'd brought a friend along. He's named Wascally, after the Wascally rabbit in the Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd cartoon. One of them was seen by the pond at 7:44, but I don't know which one. All was quiet again until 1:10, when the ring-necked dove triggered the camera. A dunnock was also captured in the left foreground and a robin in the upper left. 30 minutes later, it was a pigeon and dove that triggered the camera. Another 20 minutes passed before a robin triggered the camera. The rest of the day saw no action. Just after 1 a.m, Socks came from the lawn, stopped for a very quick drink, and exited towards the bottom of the wood. He was the only overnight capture. Not long after noon, the dove was by the pond, when a marsh tit landed at the end of the pond. As the marsh tit left, a chaffinch arrived. At 12:36, the robin dropped in. While the robin might be a bully with smaller birds, it was chased by the dove. The next pond visitor was a bluetit, though I think it was a lucky capture as a result of the dove triggering the camera. It was the dove and dunnock that finished the captures for the 14th, with no evening captures after that. Thanks for watching. Do consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Bye.